sometimes when you're working for legacy carriers, legacy airlines, I would say, in travel, is they can feel like tankers. It's a fine balance, like you say, isn't it? There is the existing ways of working, and it's about developing the new ways of working. And ultimately, we've all got to remember what we're here for. We're here for the customer, to serve a customer. It's very exciting when you hear the plans, and like you said, at the same time, it raises eyebrows. The amount of money being invested, the desire to compete with some of the top 5 airlines in the world, and you know, people kind of look over and think they can't do that. We do need more disruptors. We need more disruptors to kind of talk, rather than just talk about what we can do in the confines of what's available to us, is actually what can we do next? How can an operation run differently? How can we personalize travel in a way that it hasn't been done today? Or why is it so easy to do something on a phone? We know aircraft will turn up late. They get turned around late. Resources are not in place. In general, I think the danger is you could be left behind by the consumer. I think everything can be made complex. Fundamentally, you've hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, travel is emotive. It's an experience.
Welcome everyone again to the Flying High Club podcast. It's me, your host Raza Ali, and today is a special one. I'm joined today by a guest that's very close to myself and a journey that I've watched from actually a very young age. He is a inspirational leader, quoted as some as being a diamond in the rough, and one to watch out as a leader for the future. He leads one of the most complex operations in one of the most complex regions and for one of the largest airlines in the world. He has a great background from the beginnings by being in check-in and further on leading a worldwide operation. I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Sohail Ali.
Thank you, Reza. No, it's a privilege to be here. I think you've maybe oversold me there. We'll find out on the podcast how it all works out. But no, pleasure to be here. And I'm really glad that we are kicking this off finally. And look forward to having a good conversation, which I hope that we can all kind of benefit from. And it's a good experience for me too.
Oh, amazing. And I know it's been a long time coming and trying to get everything sorted and planned. But this is something me and Sohail have been wanting to try bring to the market, as it were, for a very long time. And the reason I say this is close to home is many of you in the industry would have seen us in the aviation space at conferences and talking, but little did anyone know that we're actually brothers and brothers in aviation. Mm-hmm. So I followed suit from Sohail and my father, who have been in aviation, which we'll cover. But when we sat down, we looked at what was going on in the modern world and the world of content and video creation, and seen the real lack of it in our industry. And we thought that we should tackle this head on and have deep, meaningful conversations about a topic that we're so passionate about, which is aviation and travel. And that doesn't exclude, other people, but the common theme is always going to be travel, and that's one thing I'm so happy that we're able to sit down about, and what we're going to discuss all things travel today.
No, absolutely. I think, the aviation industry in itself, or travel as an industry, is huge. And I think there are many different backgrounds. It's a diverse industry. And I think it's important to make sure what we can do is bring people here and show relatable content that people can look to. Two normal individuals and many more that come along here and see their journey, understand it, and hopefully pick up something that we can all take away from, because experience-based learning is probably the best way to learn. You want to get yourself in there, get your hands dirty and learn, and hopefully we can talk about that today as well. But yeah, no, thoroughly looking forward to the future of what we're doing here with Flying High Club. I think this is one element, and I think as things progress, we'll see more and more layers and opportunities that come around with what we are presenting to you all here. So like I said, I'm really excited to be here. Look forward to the conversation today.
Amazing. So that brings us on really nicely to the start, and it's the one question that I'm probably going to move forward with everyone going forward is, the journey of beginning your career. and how that went about and how you actually came into travel. I know it's a sort of a unique story, so I think it would bring loads of people's a lot of relatable stories, a lot of relatable experiences. So it would be great to start off there. Talk to me about your early career as and covering education and background and everything like that.
Sure. So I think what you find with most people, I don't think anyone has it planned out. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I would give to anyone. Your career, we all have ideas, we all have thoughts, and those change as we grow, and the opportunities that present themselves to us. So, growing up in the UK, I wanted to be a footballer. I thought I was pretty good. Obviously not. But no, as you grow up, and I think as I kind of went through the A-level process. Actually, again, I was really affiliated to sport, and I wanted to get into things like wanting to be a sports agent. I thought I had quite a business mind. I like sport. I'm not as good as I thought I would be athletically, but how could I still get involved? And that was the direction I was taking. And then actually, the opportunity to meet new people, new surroundings, meant that I took a different path. So I guess the biggest first thing I would say is I think my career now would look quite well thought out. I can assure everyone it wasn't. I think it is about learning. It is about taking steps, being brave. I think every opportunity is an opportunity. You need to go and grasp it. In the worst case scenario, you'll learn that you don't want to do something. And in the best case scenario, you could fledge and make a career out of it. And the ironic thing is I always told myself I wouldn't work in aviation because, Dad worked in aviation. I'm very grateful for what I've learned from him. Starting out at the age of 17, working his way through ramp operations, etc. And I was surrounded by aviation and travel. I was very fortunate to be traveling from a very young age, and that kind of was ingrained in me. And again, when I got the opportunity to start working, it was the opportunity to go work at a travel agency. It was a small startup. Again, appreciating an entrepreneurship mindset. It was a travel agency in a home, working online. At the age of 19, I would go sit there on the weekends and learn things like WorldSpan and or just how to make presentations, etc. Basic internship, but it kind of made me understand travel. And then the opportunity came along to join the airline industry, and even then I didn't really want to do it. I thought, maybe I need to go back to your path. I've done A levels. I should go off to university. I had a place at university. I took a gap year. Decided to do some travel through the Middle East. I think that's where my affinity with the region started. I've always been fascinated by the language, the culture, but also knew I needed a job when I came back. And lo and behold, I ended up at working out on check-in at the age of 19, and it was an experience for sure. I definitely learned how an airport operates, and it was daunting. So look, it started off that way, and again, quickly I realized, I wanted to do more. I looked around at some of the more interesting people around me and the things they were doing, the decisions they were making. I think my history, as it shows now, going towards operations, I've always wanted that buzz. I'm always looking for what can we do differently? How can we improve things right now? I'm a very hands-on type of person. And again, I think this is what you start to shape your understanding. Now you reflect on it. I don't think I was sitting there thinking, I really enjoy working with people. I don't think I identified it in that age, because you're just enjoying the experience, you're learning. But actually, as I look back now, it's that passion that has brought me to where I am today. It's that passion to want to work with people, serve others, that I believe has kind of brought me where I am today. That's kind of how it all started.
So that's a real interesting one. There was no particular plan. There was never a set direction or a set path done by a degree or anything, as often as that can happen. And a lot of things quite often happen by chance. And just being open and having that openness to embrace, an opportunity coming to you. Do you feel that that's a a skill that comes sort of naturally, or do people need to consciously leave themselves open to opportunity and be challenged by potentially opportunities they never thought existed?
I think, look, you've hit the nail on the head, because careers are changing now. Careers are not so hierarchical. They're not so straightforward. People will move around. I think it is about trying to become as general as possible, to have a diverse career. And I think, many, even in our culture, people have decided for you, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a barrister, and that's fine. There's no disrespect for that. And that might be the career path you decide to take. But I think you've got to be open to opportunities. I think, I look back now, I think, even people that go and bus tables, waiting, it will help them understand customer service. It will help them understand the graft that's involved. I think certainly, where I sit today, I think it always helps me to be able to relate back to what it feels like to be on a check-in desk, or to be that customer at the other end of, when I look at, for example, my KPIs, how are we doing in terms of on-time performance? It's very easy to think, okay, it's not as great as it should be. We'll do something about it. But actually the core of that is actually someone has missed their journey. Someone has not made it on time. Someone has been inconvenienced. And it's about that core. So, yeah, going back to your point, the original question is, I think you will be open to the opportunities that come to you and that are presented to you. Because like I said earlier, the worst case scenario, you'll know you don't want to do that.
Yeah. And the other interesting point, obviously, to raise, and we mentioned there is a relation here, and we did have a father that worked in aviation, but we set on two completely different paths. I have mainly been in the back office, worked in IT, worked in commercial, worked in customer, and a lot of your stuff has been operational focus. So when we have conversations on similar topics, we have the unique opportunity to talk about it from both ends, and very rarely do we actually agree on many of the points, because I'll see it from a certain way, you'll see it from a certain way. But that's one of the powers of this thing that we're creating, and a podcast that we're creating, is being able to bring those topics and conversations and the different points of view and the angles that you can look at. But even then, yes, paths weren't set. There was completely different path to me and completely different path to you, although we end up towards the same direction. But yeah,
it's quite funny, isn't it? I think the more we ran away from travel followed us.
Yeah.
And that's quite ironic, because now we are the ones traveling. So it's quite a unique story. But and that's where it comes from, right? I think if you had close the path off, like I thought in my head, I don't ever want to work in aviation, was the kind of thing I said at 18, and lo and behold, here I am still 18 years later and loving it. I think that's the key thing. You need to find a passion, something you enjoy, and go after it, I think that the amazing thing about aviation and travel is the diversity of those people, the backgrounds that they bring, or the experiences they bring. We're quite a unique bunch in that sense. You find people that have worked, as you say, from all sorts of backgrounds and come together in quite a unique melting pot across the ecosystem that is travel.
Yeah, I agree. And then just following on from on the career path where we were talking about, so your first job being check-in, and how did you find that experience? Because that is, you are a young person. You're going to take on a wealth of new information. You're going to be serving the needs of others. I imagine there'll be long shifts, long time standing on your feet, a lot of jargon that's going to have to be learned. And also, having that knowledge that you're having to serve someone and get someone from A to B, or to A to C via B. How did you sort of find that challenge? What was the sort of unique experiences that you went, and if there's any particular stories that you could remember going back that time that sort of stand out for you?
I think, I would have put it to an equivalent of, like an internship or like a summer job in my mind. Is I thought I'd come and do this for a little bit. And like I said, here I am 18 years later, still in that industry. I think it goes back to, again, your experiences. I'm very fortunate. Our father's always pushed us towards voluntary work in the community, and I think that's always driven a service kind of culture or innate personality trait for us all. And I think serving others is another joy. I think we're talking about here careers and fulfillment that comes from careers. There'll also be personal goals, but I think there's something definitely very spiritual about being able to serve others. And I think that in a way you channel that. And I think that was very easy for me at the time. But yeah, coming in, and like I said, I think quickly after 6 months or so, I was like, I could be doing more here. I should be doing more here. And I think that's the other thing. You've got to back yourself. And I think we'll talk about that more as we go further forward in the discussion. But I was like, well, with no understanding or recollection of what, one of these managers, sorting out, organizing resources, managing the operational floor plate, as it were, I could do that without understanding exactly what they do. Not, I should be doing that. Why can't I do that? And I think then you understand the gap. And actually going back to stories, just a year in, I was pulled aside by one of my managers, and it was like, I remember it very vividly. It was like, what are you doing? And I thought, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm doing my job. And he's like, but no, what next? And I'm thinking, what does he mean, what next? Does he want to know my next shift? But it takes people reaching out and having a conversation and maybe opening up possibilities to you that you're not maybe aware of or open to. And it was like, well, there's a manager's job here, you should apply for it. And I laughed. That was my initial response. I was like, I'm 20. And the kind of time I was working in that environment, it was, the tradition was, you're kind of, you go through the ranks, you can't apply for a job for another few years. And actually that mold was being broken there. I was like, well, no, you definitely capable, you should apply. And even then I was like, well, okay, I'll apply. It was very, let's give it a go. And again, things progress from there. So I think sometimes, like you say, you got to, the whole essence of what I'll keep saying about my story is you got to continue to try. There's no, and I love that today, that I see that in a lot of young people joining the industry, or people that I work with, is they'll give it a go. And that's really important. Even what we're doing, I think I'm inspired by the youth here. It's actually, what's the worst that's going to happen here? People might not watch this, but actually, at the worst case scenario, we've had an experience. I've maybe reflected on what my career looked like, and you may have learned something, and I may have taken away something from this experience. So I don't think there's ever a bad decision in that sense. There's always a learning from every opportunity that presents itself.
And then going on, so how did you progress through your career? What came next, and how did that lead you where you are up to today?
Yeah, so there's a small airport, obviously, down the road, Heathrow. Happened to be opening up a new terminal, and there was an opportunity to get involved in that. And again, and by that point, I was like, why not? Any opportunities that came up, why not? So
this is the big, huge, famous infrastructure project that's renowned in many scenarios. Terminal 5.
Yeah. So, and look, for me, it was a great experience, right? I walked into that building, which was still a shell, and actually 2.5 years later, I was walking out of that building when it was a fully functional airport terminal. So, again, a real deep, if I'm working customer services, to then move into operational processes, moving into working with colleagues across the operation, colleagues from the airport itself, and seeing that all come together and being involved in shaping that, it was a really unique experience. And I think it got me a lot of visibility. And after that, I knew I couldn't go back to doing what I was doing. So, once that was all set up, it was kind of time for me to move on. And then I began to apply for anything and everything, and again, it was a desire. And I think that's where that point goes back to, I really knew I needed to do something different, and I was going to do that no matter what. So I always laugh to colleagues who ask me about, how it all started for me, or people I speak to in the terminals now, or when I go to conferences and have these conversations. And I said, I was applying for 50 jobs a week. I went to interviews for things I had no clue what they were, but I knew even that experience, pushing myself and my boundaries, I would learn something. I had no idea what fair distribution was. and I did a presentation on why it's important. And unfortunately, in those days, I didn't have the access to Google on my smartphone. The point is about pushing my boundaries, and actually, even that process made me learn more about the industry.
So there's a couple of key themes, and I think I'm feeling the energy. There was a real drive from you at that age. Where does that drive come from? What was fueling that drive? And is that still with you today?
Yeah. No, look, you reflect on these things over and over. I mean, I know many members of our family say, "Oh, Sohail's very ambitious." I don't see it as that. I see it as actually, wanting to learn the next thing. I think what you've always got to be open to is learning. And even now, whether we talk about travel, we talk about anything around us, everything's changing. Technology around us is changing, and you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to educate yourself. And if you're just going to do things the way you've always done them, then you're never really going to move forward. So I think for me, it was always, I still have that hunger to learn. I'm very privileged to sit where I sit, but by no means am I a finished article, right? There's a lot more to learn out there. There's a whole world to explore. And I think that's where, moving from the UK came from, the desire to want to experience new things, new cultures, identify with new people. So where it's come from, I think it's always been a desire to learn. That's fundamentally where it's come from. And again, my father's a first generation immigrant in this country. I also saw him work really hard from a young age, and I wanted to make sure I amplified that with my career and built up better opportunities. So I think it's a bit of both of those.
Brilliant. And then just continuing on following from your career, though, so there were a various number of roles towards the more recent times. Is there a more significant role that you started to feel more in your own, more in your element, performing, and then more of a understanding of where you wanted to head, or was there still a path not quite clear?
I still say to you, I don't think the path is very clear. I think I would say once I became a manager, I realized, I've managed cabin crew, for example, in the IFC departments, the flight ops departments, those areas. Again, a new breed, a new department, a new area of expertise. But I always had an affinity to wanting to work overseas. So for example, I wanted to be an airport manager. And once there's wouldn't be good to have some control yourself and run this area yourself. Looking back, I'm thinking it's quite straightforward. But actually, at the time, it was like I want to do it, and and I think sometimes again it goes back to putting yourself out of your comfort zone. I think hopefully what I can portray today, and I think what you would see in my own career is Sohail has always pushed himself out of his comfort zone. So I went to Algeria, of all places, 6 months after I got married. That's a surprise for my wife, but it was again, it was an opportunity to experience something different, go and do something, knowing that I could come back. And I thought, why not? And it's that curiosity that then, I had to learn to fend for ourselves in a country where they don't speak English. I had to run an operation out of there, get things done, influence people, influence government, manage colleagues, all without the language. And that was a unique experience. But what I always told myself when it got difficult is that, you know what, no one can ever doubt my resilience after I deliver this, because you want to ask me about a difficult scenario, I have a great example. And when people talk about interviews and coming up with great examples, it's about finding moments like that and making moments like that in your career.
Brilliant stuff. I think, again, this is why the topic of travel is so emotive for us and other people. The doors and the opportunities it opens, the windows into other countries, the life experiences it brings, and that's why we think it's such an important role in society and people's lives, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I just love the reach that it can give. But yeah, and then following on from that, various roles in different countries, and then you landed where you are today. So what are you doing? What are you doing today?
Yeah, so I think I then had an opportunity to go down and manage my own operation at a larger scale at Gatwick, and I was very grateful for that opportunity, because actually I think those 3 years really shaped, going back to your point about career, where it shaped me. It was Gatwick's an amazing infrastructure, a great community.
And the great thing about this is, knowing this, and obviously we have the view of hindsight now, you worked with quite a few special people who are in very special roles right now, who are very close to you in that operation.
Yeah. I mean, my point there is Gatwick is very unique. It's a unique business model. It's small enough to know everyone. It's large enough to still challenge you. And I think through that, I was very fortunate that what we did down there was more visible. If I be honest, when you're working in large volume, things can get lost. And I think some of the initiatives we put down there by making the airline the most punctual airline out of Gatwick for 2 years running, an improvement in the operation, creating new processes, designing new customer experiences, changing terminals in that time, enhancing the customer product down there. I think it was really, really fascinating that the way we could do those things and do them at speed. And I think that's what I learned at Gatwick, the ability to work so agile in an operation. Sometimes when you're working for legacy carriers, legacy airlines, I would say, in travel, is they can feel like tankers when they're moving. And that is a challenge, because again, we're talking about energy, and I hope that comes across today. We're all talking about, the ambition, the drive, but you've got to learn to take people with you. But equally, not everyone's going to come with you. So you've got a decision to make, You either can slow down and, carry on as everyone else and carry on doing what you're supposed to do, or believe you can push things through and take that on and deliver it. And I think, we chose the latter down at Gatwick, and I think it was a phenomenal experience. We had a lot of fun. And that was important. And I think that kind of, at that point, before I'd got there, I was a bit lost. I wasn't quite sure, going back to your point, what happens next. And that's where you need good leaders, good managers, good supporters, good advocates. Because, my boss down there, when he asked me to come and manage the operation, the ground operation specifically, the movements of the aircraft, I'm learning about stand allocation. I'm learning about block operation centers, block times, and I was a bit like, I don't know anything about operations in that sense. And it's just the confidence of someone turning around and saying, well, neither do I. We'll learn it together. Of course he didn't know what he's talking about, but the point is giving you that confidence, and I think that's what I've learned and carry on today. So like I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? Those experiences are what shape you. So I think Gatwick was a big part of that. And I think at that time I also knew I wanted to experience something overseas. I wanted to kind of move towards Asia, Middle East, and the opportunity to run the entire operation across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific came along, and with that came the opportunity to move to the UAE, which I did just before COVID. But looking back at that, it was the best decision I made at the time, because it is my dream job. I'm managing over 26 countries, diverse operations, working with some fantastically diverse people who can pull a rabbit out of the hat if you give them the confidence, you empower them. So I'm very fortunate where I'm exposed and work with a wide range of network and stakeholders. So it's really about now building upon that.
So this is where we're going to refer back to the intro of the region that you manage is so diverse, so unique. You think you travel 6 hours and you discover something completely different. Over there, you travel 3 hours and you're in a completely different zone. So you've got the region of the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, really up and coming regions, and that sort of brings me to one of the next points that I'll sort of discuss. A lot of news coming out of the Middle East of new carriers being born, current carriers reinvesting and really taken and stepped up the game, if you were, and you're in a unique position, sitting in the Middle East, representing a European carrier, and you see these new carriers coming around, and one we can quote, like you have a Riyadh Air, a new airline backed by the Saudi investment funds, and who are really setting an ambitious goal of changing the game, of rewriting how things are done, and ramping up operations like you've never seen it. You coming from an operations background, being from around that region and having that experience, if I posed the question to you, how would you go about that challenge if that challenge was given to you? You have a healthy budget, you have a lot of backing, and you have the goal of trying to be the size of a very big carriers that currently exist in that region by 2030. How do you go about that?
Look, I think it's a good question. I think that the main thing you've got to take away when you want to deliver something like this is that you've got to have people that buy into a vision. And I think what you're seeing in the Middle East is people buying into a vision. There is a massive desire for a change, a shift in the thought process when it comes to people that think of Saudi Arabia, when they think about what's possible there. And I think the amount of change that is happening there, it's about taking people with you. So I think a vision. So I think in this case, you've got people backing that, like you said, financially, but I think there is a clear vision about where they want to get to. It's ambitious, but I don't think, as they say, if you don't reach for the stars, you know, at the worst case you'll land on the clouds. So I think you have to try and do that. And I think what I would say from an operations perspective, when you're trying to do something so big, is about trying to get the basics right. I think you can always look at what's out there today and try and emulate and copy. But I think we've seen over the years that can only get you so far. So right now you'd be making decisions that are, as we've seen, whether it's fleet decisions you're making, that will tell you how complex your operation will be in 10 years' time. Because, if you choose a complex fleet structure, that will add complexity into your operation and the flexibility you have in your operation. I think the other thing is about how you can digitize. I think this is a great opportunity. I think if you asked any legacy carrier, there's a few pieces they will happily move away from, but can't. So I think it's about, and I think you're seeing that. Whether it's there or the projects you're seeing in NEOM right now, it's not, and it goes back to what we're trying to get to here. I'm mentioning on aviation, I'm talking about airlines, but actually it is about travel. And what the language you're seeing in Saudi Arabia at the moment or in the Middle East is about mobility. That's what it comes down to. It's about mobility and how do you get someone from A to B. So one vehicle is Riyadh Air, when you think about Saudi Arabia, but you're talking about the future opportunities that come with that in terms of technology, whether that's driverless vehicles, autonomous aircraft. So I think it's quite exciting, and I think what you've got to do when you're looking at it from an operational perspective is how do you build an ecosystem that works closely. So like I said, I think the vision, I think in terms of the decisions you're making around your operation, getting those basics right and making sure it's digitized, and I think you've got to go out and get the talent. There's plenty of people that would be interested in this project for sure. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But you got to get the right people in that are vested and buy into that vision, because, that's not a long time to try and deliver what the ambitions are. However, how often do you get an opportunity to go work in a startup, which is at $30 billion startup? It's an amazing opportunity, but I think you need the right type of people in there that want to go and deliver that. Be proud and excited, want to get out of bed to go and deliver something. Because right now there's nothing. Right? I mean, we're obviously hearing about the first aircraft being painted, etc. All the excitement that's being built up. But right now, people need to be working hard in the background to lay the foundations of what that operation will look like. And I think those are the core items for me that you need to kind of look at to get things right. And then that gives you the flexibility as it evolves.
I agree with what you've said there. I think having the vision and buying into it, having a clear strategy and direction, knowing what you want to achieve and your end goal is, how you want to be perceived and what brand you're trying to build, I think fantastic. And the digital aspect. See, that digital aspect, I think you have the unique opportunity to build something brand new from scratch that doesn't exist. But the problem sometimes is the incumbents who create such technology already exist and will tell you things have to be a certain way for you to function. So that sort of slightly hampers innovation. So one thing I would definitely try to recommend is think outside the box. If you can rewrite this and you're not hampered by legacy or partnerships or anything like that, and you're full and staying true to yourself, build from scratch. There's no reason why, and I believe this, why an airline can't be a Shopify shop. E-commerce should be that simple. It shouldn't be EMDs and booking classes and booking fares. It is a product that is in a product catalog that can be purchased. It is a unique product airlines sell. We sell a very unique product because you'd never get a product that actually expires and comes back the next day and there's a brand new different product. So in New York on the 7th of June at 5 o'clock, an economy seat in row F, product expiry date is to that date, and that product will never come back ever again. A new product is created the next day. That brings a unique set of challenges, but it needs to be as simple as that. That's where we need to get to. And I'm hoping people who are working in these areas and create that for us all in the space, and we can aspire to work towards that.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, like you say, isn't it? There is the existing ways of working, and it's about developing the new ways of working. And ultimately, we've all got to remember what we're here for. We're here for the customer, to serve a customer. So, rather than just accepting the pain points and saying we'll just do it fancier, that shouldn't be the goal. I mean, if again, it's very exciting when you hear the plans, and like you said, at the same time it raises eyebrows, the amount of money being invested, the desire to compete with some of the top 5 airlines in the world, and people kind of look over and think they can't do that. And I think that's the fuel, that's the driver there to say actually we can and we will, and this is how we're going to do it. It doesn't mean we're going to do it the same way as you. And I think that's where I said that compelling vision that they are going to deliver something that people don't believe that can be delivered. I think that it creates a mentality that you will go out and look to do things differently. So, look, I think good luck to them. But like I said, I think that's one of the beauties of the Middle East. I think the Middle East as a travel space is phenomenally growing. You look at where we are today. I'm in Dubai, and Dubai is one of the most sought after travel destinations in the world, because they've always remained brave. They've had a clear vision. You think about how Dubai has managed COVID, everyone regressing and thinking about how they can, how we can manage through lockdowns. It was a very clinical way of looking at it, matter of fact. At the end of the day, how many people can we manage in a hospital? And the hospitals we have, let's talk data. And the minute we get close to that, that's when we lock down. And we lock down to build infrastructure. We lock down to build readiness so that we can manage more. Did they get everything right? Probably not. But at the same time, it's about, as we say, not making a decision is a decision. Yeah. And actually they took a decision, and then back that decision. And, after a 6-week lockdown, there they were, open to the world, which seems very strange, telling everyone else we're going out. Yes, it's with restrictions, but we are out, we're working, we are getting services, we're eating out, things are happening, and that really propelled it. But again, that's the beauty of some of these countries and the desire they have in terms of growing economies, that actually what's the next step? Even now displaying their 2050 vision, that they want Dubai to be 50% greener. And you're like, wow. But the point is that desire, that signpost to get there, that vision to get there, even if they don't get there, they get halfway. That's pretty impressive. And that's the point. The direction of travel is really key. And I think with anything, and I think that's where travel, we do need more disruptors. We need more disruptors to kind of talk, rather than just talk about what we can do in the confines of what's available to us, is actually what can we do next? How can an operation run differently? How can we personalize travel in a way that it hasn't been done today? Or why is it so easy to do something on a phone, but so difficult to do when it comes to my travel or my booking? Unfortunately, the small wins are massive wins in our industry, when actually outside of our industry they're still very small, and that's what we've got to change.
Brilliant. So how we talked a lot about mentioning of technology. We mentioned things like data and being, digitally native. So and there's other things other than just the customer journey, as it were, or digital aspects. But what key trends are you seeing in the aviation travel space right now, and where do you think there is opportunity that lies, even in the operational space that you are in?
Yeah, so look, if I talk about what's close to home, in terms of operations, I think there's a massive opportunity to automate a lot of the activity that takes place. There is a high degree of risk involved, whether it's safety or security, when it comes to high value assets moving around a confined space, and more importantly, human capital. So anything you can do to reduce the risk to people and your assets is only going to help make your operation slicker and more efficient. So I think I've been fortunate enough to see firsthand, and be involved in trials of things like autonomous vehicles, autonomous dollies, and I think the kind of need from individuals and customers who want choice is looking at more sustainable and efficient ways of working, and I think the two can marry. The thing is a turnaround. Where I'd love to do a little skill bite on this one day. We could talk about it, but effectively an aircraft comes in, a certain number of activities happen, and then it goes out. Those same activities happen
over
and over again. Slight modifications, but there is a whole array of data available to you to help enhance that. And that then builds up not only to making sure you have a predictable, reliable operation, but beyond that, then you can have a predictable operation at your airport. Beyond that, you can have predictable skies around your airport. You see where you're getting as you get further out and out. That way of working will only bring more efficiency. We will see in the summer, significant pressure on the skies over Europe. We always do. The air traffic environment isn't conducive, but we know that. We know aircraft will turn up late. They get turned around late. Resources are not in place. We struggle with resources. We turn it back round, and it's still late. It gets to the other end late, and then it has to come back. And this cyclical cycle is then knocking on to tomorrow's operation. So the more predictable we can make it, I think the ability that we have around data, machine learning, I think, like I said, this is predictive. I should be able to tell that this reg of aircraft will be late by X amount when it flies the route it does, this flight number. My point is again, it's about being fast with that, being agile with that, being dynamic with that. Today I could type in a flight number on Google and it will tell me generally that flight is late. If Google's telling me that, why am I not using data like that?
Mm-hmm.
More and more, and that's the danger, with airlines and aviation in general. I think the danger is you could be left behind by the consumer. Yes, it's a complex business, certainly is, and none of this comes easy. But that's not an excuse. The point is the customer's demanding more. Whether that's today technology enabling that, or just the curiosity of the customer. Today, using an AirTag, I can find out exactly where my bag is.
Mm-hmm.
But my arrivals agent who searches the system can only see that the bag was tagged in a certain destination.
Yeah, doesn't know where it is, where it has.
I mean, we'll have a good idea, but factually, the system will say. So if I was flying London to Dubai, it will say the bag was tagged in Dubai and it was seen and it was maybe loaded in Dubai. Now, obviously, it's only got one place to go from there if it's been loaded, but we're not at the point where we can see where it is exactly. Whereas this technology says, well, no, I know where it is. It's sitting out there, or it's at Heathrow. It's there. It's being delivered, or whatever it might be. But my point is there is a lot of opportunity out there, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years we will see elements of this starting to happen. At the moment, we see a lot of proof of concepts, And I think that's where collaboration needs to come in. You can't have your own agenda. So if this helps the airport, ultimately it's going to help the airline. If it helps the airline, it's ultimately going to help the customer. You've got to take a bigger view on these things. And I think that's where we have responsibility as leaders, to try and give a more strategic view to these things, to say, actually, in the long run, this is better for the consumer. And ultimately, the consumer will be happier, therefore want to come back.
Makes complete sense. And I couldn't agree more. I think the new age that we're living in and the speed at which technology is being brought forward. Take, for example, your AI and machine learning. The speed that works in, we will be reactive rather than proactive on that one, because I don't think we'll be able to keep up with it. But it's going to bring a wealth of opportunity. Many examples which you mentioned of baggage, of on predictability and stability in operations, which I hope people, especially even carriers who are from a legacy heritage, can implement quite fast, because again, we play a role in society of giving them the opportunity to go somewhere, and they need to arrive on time, and it's really hard once you've disrupted someone or made someone angry to keep that loyal business and to keep them happy. Luckily, you have a captive audience for a certain number of hours where you can recover that, but it should never always be relied on that there's a cabin crew that need to go and do service recovery for you all the time.
I think everything can be made complex. Fundamentally, you've hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, travel is emotive. It's an experience. And it's our responsibility, to work around that experience, to make that a pleasurable experience. Whether sometimes it can feel that way or not, when I'm turning an aircraft around, I've got the pressure to get it away. But like you say, there are, travel is something that is very close to everyone. It's an experience. It's a feeling, and that's what we kind of always have to remind ourselves. We're one cog as part of that emotional journey that someone goes on. Whether that's going to experience a new part of the world, whether that's unfortunately going to attend a funeral, whether it's to go attend the birth of a child or an experience, a graduation. There are so many emotions that are in travel. And I think, we play one part of that to get that person from A to B. And we've got to do more to make sure that we make that a smoother journey for someone.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a brilliant point that you make. So just when we've covered the digital part, we've covered your operational background, and taking all that in consideration, I'll ask you a question here. If you were in current times, a younger age, starting out your career with all the technology that's available, opportunities that are available, starting your career in aviation, what would you be looking at and what would you be doing and how would you be going about it? I know you mentioned that no path is ever written, but what sort of things would you be looking to take advantage of and use to help benefit you in your career if you're currently doing that?
Look, the industry can feel quite hard right now, after COVID, and I think we are custodians of the industry. We are examples in the industry. And I think if I looked at today, the wealth of information available is boundless. And I think learning has changed, where I would say, go read about aviation or go read about aviation economics. Actually, the amount of content that's out there, we can spend endless hours on social media. There is beneficial social media out there. There's some really great accounts where, just about learning about that industry, getting that wider scope. But I guess my thing would be just get in. I would encourage anyone to walk in. There is some really great opportunities, whether it's, if you're a graduate, there are graduate schemes, there are entry level roles. And I think it goes back to now what I would say is where maybe I fluked it at the start. I just wanted the experience and see where I got to. I think I'd be a bit more purpose-led in terms of that. That actually, if I am going to go and work on check-in or I'm going to work on the ramp, it's because I want to learn the operation. If I'm going to work in sales, I want to understand the end-to-end sales process, because at some point I want to go manage it. I want to go lead it. So I'd be a bit more purposeful in that sense. And I think it's about be brave, you know. And I think that's difficult because, like I said, travel can be quite traditional. But, you know, I would love to hear about someone who doesn't know about the airline industry, about how they would run an airline. I would love to hear the question you asked me about the Middle East to someone who has experience in pharmaceuticals, because it's all about fresh ideas. And I think we're in a place now where people are willing to challenge the norm. You know, there's risk in that. But I think I would be recommending that, you know, you've got to be brave. You know, my equivalent of applying, that applies today. You know, I know people are struggling, you know, to kind of find their way, but there are opportunities out there. You've got to go pursue them. You know, just because you applied for 10 jobs and didn't get something, that means you didn't apply for enough. You know, you need to put yourself out there. You know, your CV, your scope around what you do today, what you're trying to do, is your sales pitch. You know, and your sales pitch needs to take into consideration the consumer, i.e. the recruiter who's looking at it. But it also needs to market. You need to be able to market yourself. So you've got to really look at yourself when you're putting things across like that, to say, actually, am I doing the best? So for example, when you're following up sales leads, you'll you know, write down the individual's names, the contact details, when you last spoke to them. How many people do that about their jobs when they're applying for jobs? So I spoke to Raza. We had a good conversation. When was the last time you followed up with Raza? How long has it been since you last spoke to him? Because that's how your Salesforce, your CRM will work when it comes to sales leads. That's what you'd be expected to do. But you'll be doing that for a product. But what about your product? Are we doing enough of those kind of things? So I think, look, none of this is easy. Yeah, it doesn't come easy. People have to work hard, but you've got to find a path, and you've got to kind of pursue that path. And that's what I would say. I'd say, you know, always be open to learning. That would be my biggest thing. Aviation, travel is a phenomenal industry. I think there are, you can do anything. You can literally do anything. You want to go work as a rep at a hotel over the summers, that's travel. You want to go and be a tour guide, that's travel. We've done that as well. You want to go and work in an airline. You want to go work in ground handling. You want to go work in a sales shop. There are so many opportunities. Engineering, the list is endless, and the amount of skills and experiences you get from that. So, of course, I'm biased, but I don't think there's a better place to be than travel.
Brilliant. So Sohail, we've covered a lot of ground today, and there's one thing that's sort of shouting out to give a gem of advice that we want to give to anyone watching. Sort of, what are the general skills that you think are really important in a workplace, especially aviation and travel, but in a general workplace? What advice would you give to someone as skills to work on or improve or look out for?
Look, I think it's a really good question. I think the biggest thing I would always say is the ability to communicate. And that's multifaceted, because to be able to communicate well, you need to be able to listen well. A lot of people take listening as listening to speak, and I think there needs to be more active listening. I think if you can develop that skill, that's really important, because you'll kind of be able to develop the kind of non-speaking body language that comes with that, and in terms of reading the room and reading people. I think communication is a big one. I think the other thing is about willingness to learn. Like I said, I think sometimes titles are what they are. It's just a way of being able to identify you. They can work in your favor. They can also work against you, because people might not want to come talk to you because you are too senior. Equally, the people might not want to talk to you because you're not senior enough. So titles are what they are, and I think that's where your ability and willingness to learn is really important. I think the other thing is, and again, I'm focusing on soft skills here, because I think those are the ones that need to be developed. And I think my concern today when I see new talent coming through is it's very easy, because again of the lifestyles we live today, very online lifestyles, slightly introvert lifestyles. There is a danger of that. So you could lose those skills, whether it's public speaking or communicating effectively is my worry. And that's why I think those are really important, because again, the emotion you can put across in your communication is massive, and the ability to connect with people.
So there's an interesting question, and by no means am I generalizing here, but do you think that the sort of communication, the possible public speaking, or the outward human to human conversation is dying out with the faces that we see on social media, the use of your chats and your WhatsApp? Do you think that skill and the art of talking to another human is dying out, or is that?
I don't know if I'm best placed to kind of make those kind of claims, but yes, it is as simple as. I mean, the point here is the dynamics and the ability to practice those skills is dwindling away. I think that's why even this today, we could have done this as a one in front of a camera, but I think it's compelling and it's interesting that we're doing it with two people as a conversation, because I think there would be a very different audience, and I think there would be a different outcome if it was just one of us. So I think people are just by nature, and I think that's where you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to be aware of that. So it is dying because naturally we're not getting enough time to communicate. I think I don't think we can blame technology, because I think there are other advantages to it. I think you just got to be more aware of it, that actually the opportunity to communicate face to face is kind of moving away. Even in the workplace, it's very easy to now, you have behaviors where you could be in the same office space and people are calling you on Teams. And I think that's where you've got a role model. That's where you've got to maybe, set the example. And there's ways of doing that, isn't there? It's why don't you just,
Get up
stand
and
up and walk up to them and say, "Oh,
coffee.
I'm here. Don't worry. Let's have a conversation now."
Yeah.
Yes, it could be easy for you because you'd rather sit on your desk and get on with the next thing. There's always a reason why, but you've got to prioritize, I think, those communication opportunities.
Brilliant. And we covered a lot of ground, and you mentioned one key thing, that you had a lot of people that sort of reached out along your journey, along your career, to say, give you inspiration, give you guidance, give you mentorship, whatever that really is. Are there some key standout people that you can recall that gave you, a sort of gem of advice or anything like that?
Yeah. So look, I think every success has many people along the way. I think whether that's those around you at home, in your personal life, or even in your work life. And I think I would always encourage people to go identify mentors. And there's two ways of looking at that, right? Because there might be people you aspire to be like, right? And or the roles that they're doing. That's one great thing. Say, I want to do that role. That looks interesting. Why don't I go meet this person? And the beauty is we're all human and we have egos. Yeah. So it's no harm in stroking someone's ego. Coming to me and saying, I love what you do. I love the role that you do. I love all the activity that's involved with what I see. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to hear your story. Like even today, that's what you're doing. I mean, the point is again, the human connection. That's where you build it from. If you just sent me an email asking me, can you tell me about your career? I'd probably ignore it. There's no connection there. But a conversation and reaching out to my needs will attract my attention, and that's really, really important. So I think there are a number of people, and I think hopefully we'll get them on the podcast. I'd like you to kind of talk to them, then you'll see who they are. But there are too many to name. I think along the way there have been many individuals who've pushed me in a way that I never knew was possible. Or I looked at those people and thought, I couldn't get there. And I think those have changed along the way, and that's kind of my big push out of that is, identify mentors. People that you want to be like, and take the best. But yeah, I mean, look, if I look at some of the names, I've worked with Tom Stoddart at City Flyer. I think a big influence on my career. Sean Doyle at British Airways. I think a great example I can give someone like Sean is in one of his previous roles, he was overseeing Gatwick, and I was looking after the operation down there, and I went to kind of have my first one-to-one with him, and I'm thinking, oh, I took all my data, all my information, and it threw me off because he's asked me how I was doing, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm doing well, and this is how the operate. He goes, no, I'm asking how you're doing, and I was a bit like, I'm okay. I'm not sure, but actually, and then that one-to-one transpired about giving me homework to go read books on culture, and I walked away thinking, oh, okay, really baffled, but actually it made me realize, actually, like you say, the work is the work, and I guess that's why someone like Sean is where they are, because they take a bigger view of things and a bit more holistic, and it was more about talk to me about culture at work. Let's learn about it together. Let's share ideas, and it was very, very unique, and it got me thinking again. And those open questions, those kind of conversational questions, rather than just the work. And actually, I remember going to him, years after, saying I never forget that, because there are moments, right? And I think the bit he said to me was, well, if the operation wasn't running well, I would have known, right? And I'd know. So why do I need to talk about things that I know you can do? I want to know about the things you can't do and how we can help you learn those things. And it's quite a profound statement that kind of stuck with me. So yeah, I mean, look, there as well. And again, I was very fortunate. Lynn Embleton, who is now at IAG Cargo, at Gatwick, I was with her as well. And Javid Malik, who is just the COO at AirAsia, certainly look to emulate his career. I think the way he's always been willing to learn, I think he's always been good counsel, and I think maybe that's rubbed off on me. When I say, I'm thinking of doing this, go do it. Or I'm not sure, what's the worst that's going to happen, go do it, push yourself. And I think there are many, many people along the way that come along, and I think there are people you look at as well and you think, wow, how, love to do what they're doing, or love to understand how they're doing. And I hope that with this podcast and this platform, we'll be able to kind of share that with the audience here, so that we can understand, well, how have they done what they've done? Because I think all being in awe is great, but actually at the essence of it all, we're all humans. We're all human, and everyone's. It's the way I would relate is, whether it's a team meeting at a junior manager level or an exec level, what I've learned is it's the same thing. It's conversations with people. You can overthink things. Actually, it's conversations with people, and ultimately, your ability to influence them, your ability to connect with them, and your ability to take them on a journey.
Fantastic. So I think then that sort of brings me to one of the sort of closing points, I guess. You've had a over 20-year career now in aviation. And like I said, we're moving through a time where technology is rampant, opportunities are rampant. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? And what does success look like for you in that time period, or even slightly further on than that? What would you like to have achieved?
I give you very confused statements, because I keep saying we'll see how it all goes, and that's how the career ended up, and that got me to where I am today. But I think you start to narrow that down. I think for me, I still have loads to learn, and I have a desire to continue learning. So I think the next 10 years, travel is an ecosystem, so for me, it's about learning about the different parts of those ecosystems, whether it's along the supply chain in aviation, whether that's, ground handling, whether that's at the airports, whether it's, working in different aspects of that, for sure. And I think it's about where I can share my knowledge, equally, and opportunities like that. But I definitely believe, Asia, Middle East, there is a really bright future there when it comes to travel. So I'd love to be involved in that. But I think it's about now taking a wider strategic view. Like I said, what's been shared with me, it's about being able to take a more holistic view of my own career. So yes, I would love for it to be in travel, but I think it's about, like I said, how can I serve the needs of others in what I do. I'm very grateful that I sit on the steering committee for a charity, Football for Peace. They do some great work. So I love being able to, again, get involved with things like that to help shape that, but equally be part of something making a positive impact on other people. So I think it goes back to the essence of what I said at the beginning. It's about my ability to serve others, and how I can do that. So yeah, do I see myself in aviation? Who knows? Do I see myself? But I definitely see myself attached to travel in some way over the next 10 years, and hopefully leading the next generation of talent, and hopefully the next phase of that industry.
Brilliant. And so this brings us to our next segment, sort of final segment that I like to close off the podcast with, is something we call the rapid fire round. So I'll be giving you some one-word questions just to get your quick fire opinion on, and some slightly longer questions to get your thoughts on as well. So it's all for a bit of fun. So listen up and let's get going. Let me know when you're ready and we'll fire away.
Fire away.
Technology.
Exciting.
Travel.
Emotion.
Sean Doyle.
Inspiration.
British Airways.
Innovator.
London.
Home.
Dubai.
Also home.
Africa.
Beautiful.
Chicken or beef?
Chicken.
Aisle or window?
Window.
City break, beach break?
I think for me, still a beach break, to be able to switch off with the kids. Yeah.
Favorite aircraft type?
747 is still my favorite aircraft type.
One essential travel item that you can't live without?
I use some. I'm not no sponsoring, but Kio eye cream is really important, especially the travel I do. I need to look half decent when I get off the plane. So it's definitely something I always travel with.
One bit of travel advice you would give to anyone?
Just go and do. Go explore.
Best holiday destination?
Best holiday destination. I would say South Africa.
Common myth about travel?
Common myth about travel, that it's complicated.
One thing you'd like to change about travel?
That people think it's complicated.
If you could choose anyone to sit next to on a 10-hour flight, who would it be and why?
Oh, God. Who would it be and why? Oh, well, look, I'm still a big football fan. So I'd love to sit next to a Messi or Ronaldo and hear about their journeys and how, the experiences they've had. But and then if I think about in aviation, I'd love to hear about the journeys, again, close to where I am today, whether it's Mr. Bakker or Sir Tim Clark. I'd love to hear about the journeys they've been on, and I hope at one point we might be able to not necessarily get them on us next to a plane, but maybe on these sofas.
I think that's the best way to end with that wish. Sohail, thank you so much for your time and coming onto the podcast. Again, this is something that we're building together. It will be very different. You'll see different locations and hopefully around the world. And what we need from you is interaction. Tell us what to talk about. Comments below. You can get in touch with Sohail on LinkedIn. I'll put the details in the description below. But thank you again. And obviously, it is an absolute pleasure doing this with you. And like I said, I've got to have the unique perspective of seeing the journey from the other side, close to home, not as a competitor or anything, but as a supportive brother. So I wish you nothing but the best and all the success. And hopefully this podcast will be something that's unique and brand new, that we get to build this industry and build some great things from it. So thank you again, Sohail, and we wish you all the best.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. And like you say, I think obviously we're doing this in the format that we normally are looking to develop this podcast on. So it's quite difficult, isn't it, when you're sitting across your brother? But I think what I would say is I think this will be a great opportunity to again share, industry news, new technology. I think we'll be talking about this platform and what else this platform will provide in terms of the Flying High Club, and we look forward to be able to share that with you. But I think I'm really proud of what you're building here, and I hope in some small way I can continue to support that. And I think that's what we need from you, your support. I don't think we're sitting here telling you we know how to do all this and this is how things should be done, but it's about bringing minds together and making something in terms of content that's relevant. So I hope we're able to do that, and I hope we can do that going forward. So as Rosa said, I think hopefully the more interaction you can give with these videos, let us know what you want to see, and we'll do our very best to tailor that to you as the audience. So yeah, look, once again, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.